You've been seeking answers from every dermatologist, doctor, and all over the internet wondering what on earth this unbearable skin issue is. You know something's up, and you've been suffering and silenced for far too long. This podcast is going to bring awareness to the brutal reality that is topical steroid addiction and withdrawal syndrome. It will give you practical mental and physical tips to help you along your journey and provide you the strength you need to push through each day. You'll hear from real people battling this illness, as well as experts in the field, and I'm also going to share with you what's happening as I battle and conquer TSW. You are not alone, you're not crazy, and you will heal. If there's one thing I know, it's that anyone going through this hell is a warrior. My name is Jennifer Powers, and I welcome you to TSW Journey to Healing.
Well, I want to welcome Leila to the show. You are so inspirational. I am so glad that we connected. This is the wonderful thing about social media and the internet, amongst many things. But I mean, I came across I don't know if it was your YouTube channel first or your Instagram, but either way, I mean, watching both of them, you have so much fun when you share your content, and it's just like, it makes you smile, even though what I'm going through, what so many of the listeners, we're all going through, what you've gone through. I mean, it is a living nightmare, but it's important to, I don't know, try to look for hope and inspiration in any little dark corner of the web or wherever the heck you can find it. And so you did that for me, and I want to thank you for that.
Oh, well, thank you. And thank you so much for having me on your podcast. I think your show is absolutely amazing. I think you've just got a great sort of different hosts and different guests and that sort of thing. And you've just got you've put together so many amazing podcasts out there for people to listen to. And I just hope everybody is listening to your podcast, because every single detail has got so much fact and knowledge and importance to it. And it's all about sort of bringing all of these elements together, so that, yes, people do feel that they're not, stranded and alone and don't have the support. And I think it's extremely important. So, yeah, my hat is off to you, Jennifer.
Well, thank you so much. I appreciate that. And I love, through suffering, sometimes we find so many different kinds of people. And that's the one huge blessing that I'm always saying. I feel like every time I get these privilege to have people on the show and have guests on, it's like, and then you get to stay connected and keep up with each other. It's just a wonderful way. If I didn't have this, I would have never met you. So it's just really cool. It's a really cool thing. Thank you for saying that about the show. I'm like a little bit rough around the edges, a Philly girl, so a lot of the shows, it's so funny. They're very I'm so drawn to them. They're very soft-spoken, and they're very beautiful, peaceful, calming music. And that is just not me. I'm like a bull in a china shop. I am very much let me just give it to you straight. Let me throw some curse words out there, and let me just say this effing sucks, whatever. And we're just going to keep it real. And that's what I loved about your content too. It's the reels that you do and the shorts, and then the educational stuff on YouTube. It's just it's fun when you can take something messy and uncomfortable and whatever, and just have fun with it and educate and just kind of put it all out there for everybody to see and learn from. So I love that. So.
Oh, thank you. Well, it's trying to be engaging, because I think there's a lot on social media that can be quite depressing, if I may say, use that word, because I think there's quite a few groups, on social media whereby, everybody sort of, and we are suffering. It is a very, very horrible, disease that is unpreventable. It's detrimental, and not having the medical support is terrible. But at the same time, I sort of feel quite strongly that, sitting there complaining to one another, it's not going to remedy anything. In actual fact, it's just going to put you in a downward cycle, rather than trying to lift you up and trying to find hey, actually, this person's done this, I might try that, or, there's other things out there. And I know some people may sort of feel, oh, that's so exhausting and I can't do that and I'm not able to do that. But that, I think, is associated with the TSW in itself, because, you don't have an enormous amount of energy, and you don't have, your adrenals are really out of whack and they're shot to pieces. So, mindset is, a huge component, if not the central component, to the healing, and to have that positivity and remain inspired, remain hopeful, and to, have a community that, sort of, yes, supports each other and listens and expresses sympathy, but at the same time, shares knowledge of healing and, different treatments, be it holistic or not holistic or what have you, so that you don't feel that, your life has come to an end, so to speak. So
totally.
That's why, and that's why I put the channel together, because at the time when I was going through TSW, and I can talk about my ups and downs, I just thought at the end of this, when I finish this and I've got the energy to do it, I'm going to produce the best content that I, me as a complete, novice can do to share what I did to heal and to put my message out there. And people can, take it or leave it as they will. But there's my message, and that's how I healed. And even to this day, if I have a flare, I have just literally a 1, 2, 3 step protocol that I do, and the flare is over in 3 to 5 days gone. It doesn't linger for weeks and weeks on end. And I know there's many people out there who believe that time will heal. And yes, your body is always trying to heal itself, but why not get there a little bit faster if you can? Why not help your body in the right direction that it wants to go in, and so that you're not having to change and alter your lifestyle to fit around your symptoms and your disease, so to speak. So
I agree with that. And I think that's a perfect segue into getting everybody excited. So if you're listening to this episode or watching this on YouTube, get excited, because wherever you're at in your journey, one of the things that just blew my mind was how quickly your journey began and ended. Like I still, and so I think you're right. I think our bodies are natural healing machines. They're working for us, not against us, despite people saying, oh, you have an autoimmune thing, and so your body's fighting itself. Our bodies are our temple. Like that's our body. They're trying to heal. They're trying to be at our best. So I agree with that. Yeah. But I also agree with, yes, if you find things, healing modalities, diets, lifestyle, whatever it is, where you can speed things up or aid your body and help it out, give it a helping hand, why would you not do that? So I think that this is a perfect opportunity for you to, first of all, let's back it up and just tell everybody where you're from and your background, but then also get into your TSW story, and then how quickly you were able to, aid your body into this recovery, which was so astounding time-wise.
Okay, well, yeah, in a nutshell, I'm British. I was born in England, and I actually now live in the south of France. I had eczema from 6 months old, and yeah, my mum was always applying steroids that was prescribed to me by my general practitioner, my GP. And the one thing that he did say was, don't apply these every single day because the skin will thin. So there were times whereby my mum would take me to the doctor after my tubes were finished, the topical steroids, and I was on a 0.5% hydrocortisone to 0.5%, and she'd be wanting to get more because I'd be flaring again. And the doctor would actually say, no, not this month. You're going to have to ride it out, and you're going to have to do oil bars and wet wrapping and all of that, because I won't give your baby steroids constantly. So that was a very good thing. And, I was a 70s baby. I'm giving away my age, but so I was very grateful in a way. And at the time, we used to go to the sunshine literally on summer holidays so that I could get the sea and the salt water to clean my skin. And then, growing up, I sort of grew out of it until I actually started having my children. And I've got photos of my face when my daughter was about 2 years old, and just before I had my son, and I had a terrible flare. But as I was pregnant with my son, I think it was early signs of TSW, but all of that inflammation went away, and I think there was a lot of sort of bursting hormones. And then it wasn't until after my son was born and I stopped breastfeeding, and I always thought I had an hormonal imbalance, because I was like, why is it when I'm pregnant and I'm breastfeeding, I have no skin problems whatsoever? I don't even need to put moisturizer on my face ever. I don't even need to do anything to it. I always was glowing, and I had plump, lovely skin, and I barely had any wrinkles alongside that, which is glorious. But at the same time, I really believed that I had some sort of hormonal balance, and it wasn't until I started doing my research, which, first off, I had a feeling it had something to do with diet, and I got I bought the eczema book by Karen Fischer, the eczema diet book, and I was reading in there this thing called topical steroid withdrawal. I'd never heard of it before, and I was wondering why my eczema, in quotations, was so severe, and in places that I'd never had eczema as a child ever before. And I decided to, and I saw that they had the link to the ITSAM website, and I looked up on there, and then from there I was watching loads of videos from, Nina Ajin and Karen Ward and Brianna Bandos, who came out with a preventable documentary, and I thought, this is me, hallelujah, this is me. And I went to a dermatologist and they said, you need to go on cyclosporin. I mean, I was red from literally my hairline all the way down to sort of my hips and around parts of my thighs. I was debilitated, I couldn't sleep. I was in all sorts of messes. And I thought I had to, just basically put on, I was making my own body butters and I was trying to manage it all by myself. And just through content that I'd been listening to and bits and pieces. And I literally didn't get anywhere for 8 months. Nothing happened for 8 months. And I had a horrible summer. It was the summer of 2019. And I literally sat in the bath and my children had their iPads. I know this sounds like a terrible mum. And they would sit on the bathroom floor with me whilst they sat in the bath for sort of 8 hours a day and let them just literally play on the iPad. I had no energy. I had no sleep. And I really felt like I was dying, basically. One day I just got up out of, and in the end, I actually did have to go back onto steroids because a friend of mine came over and she said, look, Leila, you either have to seek out some medical help or you really have to let me look after your children. Like, I don't know what else to tell you, you can't live every day like this, And my partner was away, he works on yachts, so he just wasn't around to help me with the kids. And I just went to the doctor and I went back on those steroids for 4 months and I felt like a total failure. I felt awful doing it, but at the same time I had to look after my children because not that I didn't want anybody else to, but if I could get better so that I could look after my children, I was going to do that. And then after those 4 months of being on topical steroids, and I had some oral steroids as well, on the 1st of January 2020, I decided to withdraw completely and get the support that I needed. And I found a holistic homeopath, Julia Edgley, who I mentioned in all my videos and the majority of my content, so she's quite easy to find. And she is a homeopath based here in France. And we started a program. And she put me on an elimination diet because the reasoning behind why I believe in the gut theory and why she taught me this gut theory was because obviously from all the medication you've had over your lifespan, and also obviously I had a genetic component of having eczema, and several allergies alongside, nut allergies and so forth, that, I really had to eliminate a large variety of foods for a short period of time, for 6 weeks, to reduce that inflammation. So oral steroids, topical steroids, antibiotics, painkillers, all of that erodes your gut lining. And alongside that, we also add things like poor diet, fast food, sugar, all of that. We're literally, if you think of your gut lining as a tire, a nice, thick, healthy tire, and that tire is just diminishing the longer you drive on those tires and don't get them changed, so to speak. So that's sort of my comparison. And then we went on this elimination diet, and she basically wrote me down a list of foods I couldn't have. And I had an IgE test for allergies, and then she did a kinesiology test, which is very similar to chemotherapy. And she literally, the sounds very airy-fairy, very holistic, I was very skeptical myself, but she would hold a vial of an allergy in her hand, and with her other hand, I would have to have my hand down in my hip, and if there was a movement, then that meant that I had an allergy to, or an intolerance or sensitivity to that food item. And you can either, and if you can't see her directly, you can have blood tests done and sample stool tests done through your GP, through your local doctor, in order to discover your sensitivities and your allergies, as well as your intolerances. And your sensitivities and your allergies are short term, they're not forever. I mean, some allergies, some severe allergies, for example, I'm very allergic to peanuts. That's the only one thing I'm allergic to, or I'll have a sensitivity or a small reaction to now, but it's not like I'm anaphylactic anymore. So by doing the elimination diet from the foods that I had these sensitivities, intolerances, and allergies to, I was able to then reduce that inflammation in my gut, which therefore reduced the inflammation in my skin. And that was the beginning of my journey to healing. And I swear, every single week, a part of my body, the redness, the itchiness, disappeared. And it was almost like I was sort of on some sort of surreal, it was almost like I was watching myself from an outsider, like absolutely stunned that this much progress could happen that quickly.
Yeah.
I mean, alongside, it was amazing. Alongside it, I was taking supplements as well. I won't deny, supplements did play a big role in it as well, but it's all about the elimination of foods that are basically causing a lot of permeability in your gut lining. And unless you address that, the absorption of a lot of these supplements don't really work as well. Your liver needs to cleanse alongside, especially for, antibiotics and oral steroids. You've got to cleanse that liver right through. So, yeah, I was doing the typical celery juice every single morning, and I would take it, a big glass of it, I don't know, 16 ounces, I think you call it, of pure celery juice first thing in the morning. And then I would let that sit in my gut for half an hour before I ate anything. And so on my channel, I have recipes galore as to what you can eat during the 6 weeks elimination. And similarly, when you have a flare, you can sort of return to this elimination diet a little bit. And thereafter the 6 weeks, you can have another stool and blood test done again. And it's amazing to see the results. And I've seen these with a lot of people who follow me, who've done the elimination diet, who then said, oh, I had my stool test done the other day. It was absolutely amazing. Like, there's only 3 foods that I have to avoid now compared to the 25, it's incredible how the gut will very quickly restore itself given the opportunity to do it. And by reducing that inflammation in the gut, the itch literally disappears. And I was, 5 ice packs a night. I had my neck was my worst area, and it's 36 degrees here, which is like the high 90s for you guys, Fahrenheit, and the heat here is colossal. And we don't even have any air conditioning either. And in the summer, having that terrible itch with the sweat drying on your skin and that sort of thing, that itch just sort of, it just alleviated. It just got, less and less and less. And before I knew it, I was actually sleeping, instead of 3 hours, 5 hours, instead of 5 hours, 8 hours, and not waking up at all. And also on the flip side with my energy, because, I went through sort of TSW in my 40s, and I do think with adrenals, I think the older you are, the more difficult it is on your adrenals because of your age. I had more energy. So typically I would fall flat on my face about 2 o'clock in the afternoon. I'd have no more energy. I couldn't leave the house. I'd have to lie down, have a nap, whatever it took, And instead, I was able to push right through to the end of the day. And for me, with my children, that was just the biggest blessing, was that I could function, and I didn't look or feel horrific anymore. So I really stuck with it for the 6 weeks. And then, that brought me into, about March time, mid-February, March time. And I was allowed to introduce a few more foods back into the diet. And it just, that was it really. And it was, and it sounds so easy and simple. The diet at first, the thing is, I think with a lot of the people that I've spoken to, and certainly for myself, I didn't really know much about food. I didn't really know anything about diet or really what the good foods were or the bad foods were. I didn't really understand itch and the component of histamine. And I think this is really important for people going through TSW. You might not be histamine intolerant, but the histamine foods, the healthy foods that you're eating may be very high in histamine, and that's causing a lot of the itch release, that histamine trigger, and that's what caused, a lot of those flares that you have during the course of your journey. So, targeting and removing those histamine foods, which I will pretty much do every year now in the pollen season for spring. So by mid-February, I'll just go low histamine. I'll avoid, bananas, spinach, tomatoes, nightshades, which is things like your red peppers, your green peppers, your eggplant, that sort of thing. I'll remove those from the diet temporarily so that my histamine response is strong, so that if I get stung by a wasp or, something, I become sensitive to the pollen, I no longer have that anymore because my histamine response is in good shape because I've taken those foods out of my diet and my gut doesn't have to deal with that anymore. So that, I think, was a huge stepping stone for me, was to eliminate that itch, because then your skin barrier can start to repair itself, and so it's really all about healing from the inside out and knowing the right foods, the wrong foods. And then also there's foods that you can be consuming that help alleviate the itch. There's like a whole group of them that are flavonoids that can really help, boost your collagen production, omegas, seeds, that sort of thing, and really, integrate that into your diet. So then, you don't have the dry flakiness anymore and that cycling anymore. You don't have to lather yourself with moisturizer. You don't have to, be searching for all these peptides and ceramides all the time. You can do it from the inside out, because once you get on that path, and at the time, because my inflammation was so bad, I couldn't actually put very much on my skin at all that I could tolerate. I was searching for a little moisturizer here and there for the evenings or around, the cracks of my mouth. But in the wintertime, and I struggled, to find good products. But once I sort of was on the right path to healing, from January 2020 to April 2020, I was fully healed by April 2020. Yeah.
That's incredible.
Yeah. So, it was good.
That's totally incredible. So, okay, I have a couple questions. So, because I heard you say something and it reminds me of me. You were like, I didn't really know what were good foods and bad foods necessarily. So from, age teens, 20s, 30s, were you just pretty much eating whatever the heck you wanted? I mean, you trying to be maybe healthy, but you had some junk food, you ate whatever you kind of wanted. You didn't think too much about it. Is that how you were?
Yeah. I mean, I was just sort of following what was out there, what was trending, like what people said was good for the skin. And, you'd always Google, avocados good for the skin. I love avocados, and, it wasn't until I was with Julia Edgley, my holistic practitioner, homeopath, she said, no, avocados and bananas are the highest histamine releasing foods there are on the list.
Do you know what's hilarious about that? I just had avocado toast for breakfast. And I love it. Oh my God. It's like, I'm thinking like healthy fats, so good, avocado. But
and I love them too. And now I can have probably 2 to 3 avocados a week, no problem. I can have avocado toast pretty much whenever I want now, because
really?
because it's all in balance now. Like you've got to restore the gut.
Yeah.
Back to factory settings, I like to say. And then, modify the times of year where you're more sensitive. So if you are somebody who's sensitive to pollen and you've got a history with hay fever and things like that, that's very much related to your gut and very much related to your skin condition. That is, part of the same bundle. It really comes in a bit of a package. And I sometimes I speak to people and they say, oh, I've got dreadful hay fever, but I'm quite itchy. But other than that, I'm fine during my TSW. And I said, well, that, there's a pattern you've got going on there, and you've got a set. And also think about the times of year that fruit and vegetables are, on the supermarket shelves, in your fruit and vegetable market, that sort of thing. They do say to try and eat according to the season. And things like avocados is a real tropical fruit. Is it a fruit or vegetable? I don't know. I don't know. But it tends to be a bit of a pattern. Things like bananas, mangoes, pineapples, papayas, all of those tropical kiwis. Oh my God, kiwis. They're all sort of very, very high histamine, fruits and vegetables that kind of like, well, in the fruit section, certainly, that is something that, you need to avoid if you want to bring that itch level down. And, you might be fine after you've done your 6 weeks with histamine thereafter, but it's something you sort of need to do and then progressively, slowly reintroduce those back into your diet again, and all will be well, And then every time you might have a flare, you just regress a bit more from those histamines because you want to stop itching and you don't want to open your skin up, and you want your skin to heal and, the wounds to close, because otherwise, you can see a little bit around my mouth, but I have a lot of scar tissue now from all of this rubbing that I've done for 40 years, and I've left with, scar tissue, which I'm now trying to repair. So, you don't want to, go down that road. So I think for 6 weeks, it's something that you can really invest in 6 weeks, and know that it's not a lifetime. It's not like you have to be on a diet for the rest of your life, but it does, you have to do everything in stages. Think how long it took you to get to the point in which you're at with your skin with TSW. It's probably taken, 30, 20 odd years, to think of how much work you've got to do to restore your body. It's almost like no time at all in my book anyway, just
yeah.
out the bed.
What I love about that is for the people And I was one of those people where I was thinking, I've never, I was one of those very lucky kids. I had a super high metabolism. I could eat all the junk food in the world, which I was a huge junk food eater when I was like teens, 20s. Then you're getting approaching 30, or you hit 30 and you're kind of like, I should pay more attention to this. I should start to like maybe take matters in my own hands, maybe want to be around for a lot longer for children and, whatever. But with the thought of changing your lifestyle so drastic and having to stick with it and be disciplined so that it's a permanent, forever long change, that's like, that used to be like, oh my God, I was so depressed about that. And like, to this day, like sometimes I'm like, I don't like, I sound like a little spoiled brat. I'm like, I don't want to give up the foods that I don't want to give up. But I also, I know it's not. But it sucks, but it is like, this is pretty unbearable. So if, if the thought of like doing this every day, never being able to sit still, and that's worse than giving up a few foods. So I think,
and scar tissue is kind of like it's kind of like, you'd be lucky if you have a bit of scar tissue. Some people end up with cellulitis, from topical steroids, or they need to go back into hospital. The cycle continues if you don't address your gut. You could end up either going on medication, immune suppressants, which, could be another very long fork in the road, or, you end up going back into hospital, either back onto steroids or back onto antibiotics. And, antibiotics is just stripping that gut lining every time. It's just wiping all that good bacteria and the pathogens away simultaneously. You've got to try and build that good bacteria up and eliminate these pathogens so that you don't have, this gut lining, which is full of this bad bacteria. You need to have that balance. And a lot of people don't want to give up certain things, and they've got a certain lifestyle and that sort of thing. But this is why I do my channel, to try and inspire people with certain recipes, think outside the box, give you those ideas and that creativity to think, right, what can I make today? I'm going to make one of Leila's recipes. I'm going to launch a video on Saturday where I've done fish tacos, and I've done a green gazpacho, and I've done like a super quick, easy pasta, which you just throw in garlic and olive oil and courgettes and, spring onions. And it's so tasty and it's so delicious. Once you start eliminating things like, fast foods and grease and, the gluten and the dairy, your taste buds come back so much stronger than I've ever had in my life. Like I can taste and smell, herbs and spices so acutely now than I ever did before. And so your palate becomes just a lot more refined at the same time.
That's so interesting to me. It makes a lot of sense. So just tell this Italian girl, I'm Italian and Irish descent. Okay. 50-50 split. So I like to say I get my drinking habits from my Irish side and my cooking and eating habits from my Italian side. I get it all, right? But to tell an Irish girl, or to tell an Italian girl that you can't have cheese, it's like, or like gravy, we call it gravy, not sauce, but whatever, you know what I mean? And I'm like, and speaking of that though, actually, I think it was your video that I came across where you showed how to make tomato sauce without the tomatoes. Did you do that? Okay. And I was like, I go, Mom, oh my God, get over here and look at this. Can you believe this? Like, this is crazy. And I was like, I have to try this. I can't wait to try this. So yes, to the people, like anyone listening, does it take a little bit more time, maybe more like to find these kind of recipes, maybe a little bit more preparation and stuff? Yeah. But if you can create, I remember when I tried to be vegan, that lasted 2 days. Cause I love meat. But, I was trying to make a meat sauce, and it was with mushrooms and not actual meat. And it came out really, really good. So does it take a little bit more time, a little bit more thought, maybe a little bit more effort? Yes. But if you can avoid and speed up the healing and avoid this, it's got to be worth it. It's got to be worth it. But the one thing I want to ask you though is, so you're saying the 6 weeks to do this elimination, to start with that. But after that point, and tell me if I'm understanding this right, you can slowly reintroduce certain foods, and then maybe you'll be able to eat them again. And then during allergy season, or whenever you start to feel like you're in the course of a year, when you start to feel the most irritable or, not so good, that's when you would then kind of go back to eliminate them again. So it's not like it's a permanent thing, but it will require you to take them out of your diet throughout the year, maybe at certain points. Is that?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's right. Yeah. And some people can do it some people's inflammation, the trick is once you see all that redness go and the cycling of the flaking stop, that's when your gut is basically saying, I'm on the right road to recovery. Now, some people not so much enjoy, but they want to carry on because they've got the knack for it, and they're just seeing this wonderful, transformation. They're like, I'm sticking with this. This is great, and then, they introduce foods a little bit slower. Some people, they might be more severe and they might need more like 8 weeks. It just depends. So you sort of get that. I mean, 6 weeks is the mark. I actually probably did it in about 5, but I carried on for a little bit longer because I was just so, I was just so grateful this had happened.
Yeah.
It wasn't like I had an issue with food. I mean, I actually more now than I did before I had TSW, because I would probably eat very rich foods before and not as regular. I certainly didn't have a meal plan, so to speak. So also my energy was always like this. I was always grabbing a coffee, and that sort of thing, and not being mindful of my overall wellness and well-being. And that's what I am today. I think it's a much more balanced, conscious person about food, rather than I'm restricting myself and I'm punishing myself. And that's not what it's all about, And the idea is not to cause stress to your body by thinking about this. It's really to, think, right, okay, Leila's got some of these recipes. Let me give them a try, see if I like them, see if I see some results myself, and, give it a shot, give it a shot. even if you just gave it a shot for 2 weeks, that underlying itch should really start to subside, if you're on the right course, as it were. But, otherwise, it's just that constant cycle, and I think I was just so pleased and just, I was just ecstatic, actually, that the cycle had come to an end, and I was just coming out of this, nightmare, so to speak, whereby I just couldn't function. I never went anywhere. I never saw anybody. I was a total recluse. I hated the way I looked. I hated the way I felt. I was constantly itching. I hated the sun. I could never go outside. Like, it was just awful. The summer here is very extreme, and I made it my duty in the January of 2020 that coming summer I would never live like that again. I would never, and I would never allow my kids to have spend their summer like that again. And it was my duty as a mother to get myself better. So,
you did a really beautiful job, and you did it. And you're allowed to, this is a vulnerable and safe space. And I say that to everybody because I can't tell you how many times, like, it gets me like very emotional too. I get very choked up because I don't know. It's like, it's literally the hardest thing. I would have never imagined in the very beginning of learning of what this is. I had no idea how bad it was going to get. And there were so many dark days and so many dark nights and just moments of like, I can't do this anymore. Like, I can't get through this. And I'm a mom too. So I think it adds a whole nother layer of difficulty when you're responsible for these children growing up and being happy and taking care of them, and you can barely take care of yourself. So I think what you're doing is so incredibly, it's like such a gift. I mean, you're empowering people with tools and knowledge that they otherwise wouldn't get. That's one of the things too, is to keep in mind, is when we have this and we're like trying to when you grow up thinking when I have a problem, I go to a doctor. Well, if doctors don't know what this is, they don't recognize it. Also, doctors don't study nutrition unless they're a nutritionist or whatever. So it's just like, it's exhausting. It is such a mental journey. And we do have that. When you really think about, I mean, like, our only duty in life is to make sure that we are healthy, mind, body, and spirit, like taking care of ourselves 100%. So when you have things plague you like this, it is your obligation and your duty to fix it. Like, no one's going to come and be like the knight in shining armor and the hero to save the day. Like, you have to be your own, you have to do it. You have to be your own advocate, your own answer, and find a way. So
and you're a role model for your children, like my daughter has got the eczema gene, and we've nailed it right on the head, and we don't have it anymore, I mean, she gets a little bit of dryness maybe in her scalp, and that's something maybe for like a month in the winter or something like that, but we address it, we correct it, and, she would probably be as bad as maybe I was, or maybe even worse with, what's out there, in fast food places to eat. And, if she had the diet that I maybe had in my teens, now or something like that, she might actually have worse eczema than I had as a child, So, and for her to understand holistic treatment and not have to go down the steroid route, I've never applied steroids to her, thank goodness. We've been able to address it all through diet. And it's not something whereby she goes, oh, mummy, I don't get to have that, or I don't get to have this, We have substitutes, we have recipes. And then also she can have the odd treat now and again because her body can tolerate it, rather than having, these packaged meals or this, on the go. When I talk fast food, we actually don't really have fast food here in France, but it's, frozen packet meals in the supermarket, or even those ready fresh meals, that have all the antibiotics in them, and they've been, laced with phosphates and all sorts of things in there that, nitrates and things like that you really want to avoid. Again, it causes, gut permeability, so you want to really keep your gut lining in the best shape possible. And it's the one thing that's most unfortunate is that we just can't put an optical fiber down our cells to have a look inside to see if it's okay or not. So, and our skin tells us that it's not. So the relationship between your gut and your skin, and it's almost for every single skin condition, all inflammation, even arthritis and rheumatism, it's all inflammation, and it all starts from the gut. So I probably said that 100 times now.
No, but let's drill it into everyone's mind. It's important. What do you, so with that whole, with having children, but even us non-disciplined adults, did you find it hard, or did you find it hard to go out when going out to eat? Do you find that to be, or even if you're at a sports game or a fair or a play, they sell hot dogs and pretzels and things like that. And, and they are really yummy, but also really bad. So what do you find that hard?
Well, I mean, unless you're going to those sports events 3 times a week, which, I mean, you might be just a super sports fan and you get the tickets all the time, or you work there or something like that. But it's normally a special occasion. It's the same with dining out. You dine out once a week or twice a week. Are there restaurants in your area that are gluten-free? There's certain, places I'd like to go to Asian places a lot more because there was more rice products than there were, gluten products, that sort of thing. Try salad bars, what are those bowls that everybody likes now? They're with poke bowls.
Love them.
Poke bowls. But yeah, those sort of bowls, again, you've got rice and meat and some sides of vegetables, and, you should be good to go. But, I mean, the 6 weeks that I did when I did the elimination diet, we were in our lockdown. So yes, that was easier. I won't deny. And I do believe, I think doing, going through the early stages of TSW, if you live anywhere in a very, very hot country, is very difficult. And I think if you can do the elimination diet, then all the better. But typically, I would say if you were going to really go all in, I think the winter is the best time and most comfortable time to do it. I mean, it's probably the same with anybody who's coming off steroids. That itch alongside the heat and your sweat. It's just a killer combo. I mean, it can ruin your skin. It's hard. It is hard. So I'd say if you want to go out for dinner and you want to maintain the same lifestyle, then yeah, I mean, for me, really, I did change my lifestyle. I didn't restrict myself from anything socially once I'd done my 6 weeks, and I was back out there. I was egging to get out there. I was like, come on, I've got beautiful skin. I want to get out. Look at me. I want to go places. I want to do things. I want to show off my new face. But yeah, I mean, I was cautious that, if I ended up going to a pizza pasta place with my friends, my skin was on track, then I would have, that pizza, and then, then I would just diet a little bit for a couple of days so I didn't flare, and then, or just actually celery juice, to be honest. If I could just say one thing when you flare after you've done your elimination diet, the sort of stage that you're at, celery juice, it can do so much for you. I mean, it's the one thing that I would say to anybody who is, very much unable or don't feel that they've got the ability to do any sort of, dietary lifestyle changes, just do the celery juice, because even that alone will cleanse that liver and it will flush out those steroids and those toxins.
Isn't it just so interesting? So I remember following the medical medium and learning all about celery juice, buying his books. I bought the Omega, his juicer, which is not cheap. It's very expensive. The one he recommends. And I love it. And I was doing just pure celery juice. I know that sometimes people put like green apple slices or, like they sweeten it up with other, it was just straight celery juice. I think I maybe squeezed a lemon in it once because I wanted some, I don't know. And it's not the greatest tasting thing, but then you kind of get used to it and it just feels healing. Like it tastes healing, if that even makes sense. But I remember thinking, why? I remember telling like a good friend of mine, I tell my mom and they're like, that sounds like a bunch of like voodoo witchcraft, like weird. Like it just seems weird because why did it just pop up out of nowhere? Is this a trend or is this like a real scientific, is this really doing anything? And
sorry.
No, go ahead.
If you use celery juice, I mean, I knew about the medical medium and all of that, but, I follow a lot more sort of holistic French, homeopathic, naturopathic. That's sort of what we have here in France. And I follow more of those sort of people than, your side of the pond, as it were. But I had heard of him, and I heard he's, healed Kim Kardashian or whatever with celery juice and all of that. And I was very skeptical. I was really skeptical. But, when my holistic practitioner told me to try the celery juice, she said, just see how your stools and your poop become more and more regular. And I was like, oh my God, like literally in 3 days, and this is a great sign of good gut health, is having a regular, consistent stool every single day at more or less the same time. And if you can hit that on the head, and I've done a video about poop as well, you have the Bristol stool chart, and you can see that, it lists from 1 to 7, the different types of poop, basically, that comes out of your body. And, it starts from being very pebbly and hard and rocky to, very sort of loose and sort of almost like, I would say, almost a bit like Play-Doh being taken apart or something. Do you know what I mean? Very fluffy, fluffy, watery. Sorry. And you want to really aim for the middle, whereby it's like, just a soft sausage.
A log, yeah. Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah, like a good log, like, but soft. And you shouldn't have to strain. And literally, if you're having that movement at the same time every single day, your gut is in paradise, basically. And that is, if you're managing to do that, then your gut is telling you all is well, because it's like watering your garden and having the timers on. Your bowel movements and your metabolism need to have the same, time zone clock as the rest of you, so that it has that, you have that consistency all throughout.
Did you cut dairy and gluten forever, permanently? You do not touch them?
So with gluten, I've definitely cut gluten, and I've also cut corn, because they do make a lot of gluten-free products out of corn. So a lot of those gluten-free products you see on the shelves, I do avoid them as well, because they put a lot of corn in, they put a lot of preservatives in. And, corn is also quite detrimental to the gut lining as well. It causes a lot of permeability. So, that's something to really avoid. And then with dairy, I do have sheep dairy now, because I'm pretty good with sheep dairy and sheep produce here in France. There's very little antibiotics put in it. There's very little modification to, the treatment and churning and, production of dairy products. So I'm actually okay with sheep. And funnily enough, because my son, he's 5 now, but when he was a baby, he was obsessed with milk. I mean, he would have bottle after bottle after bottle. That boy, just like, he was just the milk. We just used to call him the Milky Boy. Like, it took me 2 years to get him off the boob. And then
my son is the same way, obsessed, but he likes chocolate. He likes chocolate milk. So I'm like, oh, that's much better.
Well, with chocolate milk, you can replace the chocolate with taro powder. And then with the milk, you can replace the milk with Brevi, because my son started to get an itchy back from so much milk that he was consuming. And again, Julia said to me, switch to the Brevi, which is Brevi is French for sheep. We got the sheep milk, and lo and behold, his back was cleared up. And he had as much sheep product as he wants. And now we're sort of like If we want dairy, we have sheep, and it tastes exactly the same, if not better,
Really?
in my opinion. Like, you can get like all the different varieties of cheese, but just in sheep. And, you know, if you're a real super lover of cheese, that, you know, I think there's some vegan mozzarella recipes out there that you can try. I'm not a huge fan of them because they use
I was just gonna
cashew,
say,
but
I tried like the almond milk cheese. No, no, no. Like when you grow up with like brie and mozzarella and provolone and all that, forget it. Get out of here.
It's hard. But, you know, what's the cheese that you guys like to, I'm trying to think of the name of the cheese that you guys grate over everything.
Parmesan.
All your Parmesan, and then also there's another one. But yeah, Parmesan, just for example, the Parmesan, obviously that's a fermented cheese. So the more fermented it is, you know, so you have your blue cheeses, you know, the very hard cheeses, the harder the cheese.
All of them. Yeah,
all of those. That's going to be, you know, more fermented, and it's going to be higher in histamines as well. It's going to be much harder for the gut to process. Whereas if you go to younger cheeses, you know, then your mozzarella, for example, is a much younger cheese. We have a cheese called Emmental here. We can have cultural differences with our cheeses now. But, you know, if you go for, you know, just a younger cheese, a cheese that's not aged, a spreadable cheese, we call Philadelphia. Do you have Philadelphia? Yep. The younger cheese, you know, then that sort of cheese is more tolerable, you know, in the gut than, say, a really, really hard cheese. If you really, you know,
gotcha.
A total level cheese.
Like,
but I really believe in the sheep.
Why? Oh God, I could just, now I'm fantasizing about cheese, but, what's the deal with like the sheep versus the cow? Why is the sheep's milk or cheese, like, why is that tolerable and not the cow?
Well, your last guest, Tracy, the pharmacist, he explained it. Sorry, the pharmacist, I know.
I know what you mean. Pharmacology, I don't know.
He explained it very, very well about, you know, the processing of dairy and how we're pretty much the only people on the planet that drink cow's milk. It is very, very strange when you put it into that context. I was
very
just like,
true.
oh my God, you know, you guys have to go and listen to that because it was really good. But yeah, he explained it very well. And, you know, the whole concept with, I mean, it's a farm industry, you know, it's a factory industry. It's not really farming anymore. And the whole thing of you know, extracting the milk from the cows that have been, you know, raised in not a very nice way anymore, that basically, you know, and then they're not getting the nutrients, so we're not getting the nutrients, and then it's pumped with a whole load of chemicals and products, byproducts and antibiotics and that sort of thing, that, you know, it's not suited to our gut structure. In actual fact, again, all those antibiotics in the milk stripping away our gut lining the whole time. So that, plus, you know, anything that's fermented on top with the aging, anything aged is histamine releasing. So all your leftovers from 5 days ago in your fridge they're gonna grow in histamine strength. So you want to avoid things like
makes sense.
Having constant leftovers. Yeah. Freezing is all right. If you've got something fresh and you freeze it and you unfreeze it and you have it the same day, no problem. But I mean, with cow products, I mean, I just don't really trust anymore what they put into them. But let's just say your gut doesn't really like half of what's in cow's milk and half of what's in, you know, the cheeses. But, you know, compared to sheep, you know, the sheep are still raised in grass. I mean, they are here in France. It's not a factory production here. You know, there's a lot of the farms we have. I can only speak for Europe, I'm afraid, but like a lot of the farms are more bio, which means it's more organic. You know, it's just not the industry size as compared to cow farming, and then for that reason, you know, they don't pump as many antibiotics into them, if any at all, to be honest, because I think there's actually might be a chemical imbalance or something like that if they do with the sheep. So I've heard something like that along the lines. But yeah, it just tends to be a much more tolerable substitute for cow products.
Yeah, I think that's definitely something to look into, especially if you're a dairy lover, for sure.
Yeah, and with goats, sorry, just add with goats, because I mean, obviously you've got goat's cheese and goat's milk, and nowadays that tends to be more factory farmed the same as cow. It's going in that direction, but so far sheep hasn't really gotten onto that level yet. So keep our fingers crossed.
Yeah, I know. It's so sad how corrupt these industries can get, and then how they affect so many, and people that don't take the time to get educated or look into things and investigate or ask questions, and then they get all these issues, and they don't know why. It's like, it can be right under your nose, like just the food that you're putting in your mouth, you know, and it's so sad because food is like fuel, but it's like, it's there to heal you, not hurt you. I mean, you should be using those foods to aid your specific body, your DNA, the way you're wired, to like make you feel your best, you know? So I think that's the biggest lesson that I've now realized is like, obviously there's no one size fits all. People are all different. We're all wired differently. So just finding out, taking the time to love yourself enough to take the time to discover what makes me feel the highest energy, the happiest, the most vibrant, the best, my whole, you know, you deserve that. Everybody deserves that. You deserve that. And you should be
the best version of yourself, you know, and live life to the fullest, you know, don't have these things holding you back all the time. Don't have these health problems holding you back all the time. And don't assume that, you know, that the doctor will do it for you, you know, and the drug industry will do it for you. You know, you've got to, so that, as you say, take the time to really investigate and knowledge is power, you know, and do your own research, you know, your due diligence and so forth, and you find out what you can do to better your life so that you have a much more rich and fulfilling life. I mean, that's what it's all about.
Totally, completely agree. And I don't know where I heard this or who quoted this, and I was like, wow, that's so interesting. I don't know if it was, I feel like it wasn't Warren Buffett, but it was someone famous. And they said, if you were only ever able to own, you got one car, one vehicle that you could have for 40 years, you could not have another car. Usually you could get a car every 3 years, 5 years, 10 years. You'd have this one car for 40 or 50 years. You could not. How well would you treat your car? Would you put like the cheapest gasoline in it, or would you put the most expensive? Would you wash it all the time? You would probably take optimal care of this car because you know it has to last you for 40 something years. Why do you not look at your body in the exact same way? Like, why, if you knew you only had a lifespan of till age 40, how would you live your life? You wouldn't be candy and soda and alcohol and ignoring all the health signs of you would be, you're trying your damn hardest to make sure that you are putting in and taking care of the outside and the inside as best that you possibly could. So because we're kind of like greedy a little bit and we're like, I'm going to live to like 70, 80, 90. I'm going to keep, but it's like, it's not even about then and longevity. It's about here and now. Like what you said is, as we get older, I'm 35 and afternoon comes, I'm exhausted. I'm a mom. I'm tired. Like, if you can feel massive amounts of energy, like when you look at our little children and they're like, God, I wish I could get some of that energy. Like I want some of that. Right. And then, but you're like, but I can. It's an excuse and it's a lie that we're getting older. It just happens. No, there's like 70 or 80-year-olds running marathons, doing all this stuff. They're just choosing the harder, they're doing the harder thing to live a happier, better life. So without discipline, you can choke us up to time. And I know some people are going through this and say, like, might listen to this episode and go, that's frustrating because I tried the diet stuff and it doesn't work. Again, there's no one size fits all, but I just, in general, taking good care of your gut health, your overall health, it's not going to hurt you. It's just going to help you, Yeah.
And also to seek out help, if you can get in touch with, if you can work alongside a good holistic practitioner. Like I said, I was very skeptical, I'd always just gone to medical practitioners. I'd always gone, the medical route, and thinking that they would have the answer. I had never really experienced, Chinese herbs or naturopath or, acupuncture or anything. And I think, exploring these avenues, you might surprise yourself, because I think holistic, treatments and plans and programs and things like that are really going to start taking over the medical industry. I think that, they're going to get a big shock.
Yeah. And just like you said, my last guest with Tracy, he brought up a good point. We're still years and years behind, but we are slowly catching up. And I think, in the next 30 or 40 years, we're probably going to look back at these medical treatments that we're like, oh my God, why would we ever give that to people? And that's just evolution. That's always going to be the case. It's going to continue. But if you can be the weird one of your friends or your family and be like, I'm going to do things different and I'm going to try, and avoiding these foods or trying this healing modality, be weird, be the weird one, be the weird, because it's going to be beneficial for you in the long run. And just trying, be open-minded to diet, lifestyle, be open-minded to trying new things. Like you said, acupuncture, I tried it too. Like I'm all about all of that. So I love, this was so helpful. Do you want to give any last minute? I know we're wrapping up here, but your story is so inspiring. I know people listening are be like, I want to be done with this in this short of a time that you did, but maybe I don't have the discipline, or I feel like I can't do it. It seems very like overwhelming to me. Like, what last minute tips or suggestions could you give to somebody going through TSW right now?
Well, if anybody, is looking for some guidance with their diet and is willing to, get the relative test done, then I'm happy to help them do menu plans. I'm happy to, write them lists and things like that and recipes. I can send them to them. And at the same time, watch some of the videos that I've done with all the foods, because all the foods are all grouped there in great detail, because I couldn't go through all of them with you on this podcast, and I would be talking forever. But I would just say, have an open mind. Consider, feeling through your gut, do your due diligence and research, and remember, there are people out there who have healed from TSW, who have been very successful, who are willing to share their story, who are willing to help you along your journey. I mean, I chat with about at least 20 community members on Instagram every single day, and they check in with me, they ask questions. I'm always open to communication and dialogue and helping people along their journey, because I think if we can all, come together so that you don't feel alone, and I think, have the support of one another and keep that positivity flowing, then I really feel that, it makes your journey a much more pleasant experience. And the one thing I will just want to say, just as I end on, is that I'm actually quite grateful I went through TSW. And the reason being is that I was able to change my life for the better, become a better person, become a better mother. And overall, I feel like I have almost reinvented myself, because the lifestyle that I had before, not to say that I was sort of, the crazy hedonistic person, but I wasn't careful. I was throwing caution to the wind pretty much every day with a lot of what I consumed. And I thought, because I'm a relatively thin person, I didn't need to be on any diet or anything like that. And, I didn't really believe, I didn't have any stomach problems, so why do I have a gut issue? I asked them exactly the same questions as many people out there who've got TSW are asking, and also asking, why is it me? And why the itch? And, I'm going to be like this forever. And just to know that, there are answers out there. There are things out there that are really worth exploring, and to really, do the best you can with the tools that you've got, and know that I'm here and you're here as well. So there you go.
I love that. I love that so much. And I am going to link, if you're, again, wherever you're listening to this podcast, check the show notes. If you're on YouTube, check the description. I'm going to link your YouTube and your Instagram, and let people know how they can contact you if they want to chat. And I highly recommend checking out Leila's, the recipes, the YouTube chat. It's like, they're so great. And you do such a good job of like simplifying them. They're not like, they're easy to follow. They're easy enough to do. It's nothing like crazy. I mean, we all hate those recipes that are like 50 ingredients with like a forever long thing. They're really, really great. So I cannot thank you enough. And I'm so grateful that we got connected. And just like you, I agree with you, having this terrible thing, I wouldn't wish it on my worst enemy, but because it has happened, I'm looking for the ways to practice gratitude of having it, because I meet people like you, and we're going to make a big impact and a change and help a lot of people avoid going through this nightmare if possible. So I'm grateful for you, and I'm thanking you so much for being on the show.
And thank you very much. My door's knocking.
Well, perfect timing. Bye.
Bye. Thank you for having me so much.
Thanks for listening. Please remember to subscribe and leave feedback. With your help, we can spread awareness together. So please share the show with anyone you know who may be struggling with a medical condition and using steroids to treat it. And be sure to check out the blog for helpful resources to aid you along your TSW journey at tswjourneytohealing.com.